Schultz of Northeastern Illinois University. This article is a very good first-hand account of, of a professor who was just trying to bring in this new idea of curriculum. As you read this, the article kind of flowed really fast, and I like that about it. So this is just kind of a quick review because it was just so good of an article. It says, today I have the pleasure of sharing a story with you about my experiences on a journey with young people from Chicago's Cabrini Green neighborhood. Later on in the article, he talks about it being a very kind of a run-down neighborhood, that there was a lot of issues with the school district. He says that curriculum is not all about what state boards of education decide is important for us to do with the children. And this is just a really good piece that he says that we need to get away from what the state tells us to do. And he makes a good little definition here. And he says that curriculum is the making evolved with the students. Through my discussion of this emergent curriculum, I will share many of you the theoretical tenets that I drew on to think about how to do this with young people. What I like for you to do, he says, even get started, is for you to think about a problem in your community. And this is kind of a problem-based community curriculum, if you think about it. So if we look, for example, at Meridian, we'd say Meridian, Mississippi has perhaps some issues that have arisen over the last election. For example, Meridian, Mississippi still has a major race issue that is occurring. In case you didn't know, during the Meridian election, someone put a noose on the door of an African American candidate's office. Now, does that mean that, who did it? We don't know who did it. Does that mean that, there's been a rise in the Klan in Meridian? No, there isn't, obviously, but it's not like it's 1964. However, that will definitely show you that there are some race issues going on in Meridian. So that would be a problem that is occurring in the community. Other areas and concerns in the Meridian area would obviously be education. Funding for the arts is also an issue. So just looking at problems that are occurring in the community is always good to do. The article continues on and he says, all the NCLB requirements, all this Uber testing phenomenon that we have today, and he's saying that, I'm getting a little frustrated with all of this testing that we keep talking about. I look to them, to the students, to identify and solve a problem that was important to them. So he got away from what is important to the state and wanted to know what the students thought. Within 1 hour's time, after asking the students to brainstorm what was wrong, the students came up with close to 100 different issues that had occurred. Half of the issues, of course, he found out were dealt with the school falling apart. Troubling social location. He says, this is where he talks about the school being in a kind of an area that needs help with their school. So how can we try to create rigorous, high expectations for young people when we already know what the storyline will be, which is the cycle of poverty, or the funnel effect? I'd like to go ahead right now and talk to you about what's called the funnel effect. I'll go ahead and do it like this. The funnel effect is an idea where what it says is that housing prices in the inner city are low. But because the housing prices are low, then the property values are low, and therefore the tax base is low, because your taxes are based on how much your home is worth. So, and schools receive a large amount of their funding from housing and property tax. So therefore the schools in this area will be very low funded and also have a higher population because more people are living in the inner city. The suburbs have a higher property value and therefore have better schools, but people in the funnel can't move out because property taxes are so high and they can't move out to the city. So this becomes known what is the funnel effect. Combine this with the old term that we always hear is white flight. And the idea of white flight is that whites in the 1950s and 1960s were fleeing out of the inner city to live in the suburbs. This creates a funnel with high property values in the suburbs and African Americans in the inner city. So that was where he was at the school. He was at a school that was having issues with that, with a very poor school. So I always talk about white flight and the funnel effect, all terms actually used in textbooks that you'll see if you teach history classes. So he goes, how can we try to create rigorous high expectations for kids that we already know are going to, just be stuck in that funnel? He created a video of his lecture, and you can go watch that video right here. And he continues talking. And he says, however, going back to the literature from 100 years ago, we see John Dewey started writing about this and then looking to Thomas Hopkins. So he looked at his research and he saw that Dewey even talked about that. So at a moment of kind of being discouraged, kind of saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. These students do not want to learn state testing material. They want to learn what's important to them. So he went and looked at the research and he found that Dewey and Hopkins had already been talking about this curriculum of students that are interested in something, let them learn about that. So he was reassured and comforted by the fact that he was on the right path. Look right there, it says, the idea that the integrated curriculum actually says that the people most invested in it, the stakeholders in the classroom, is where the integration comes. Now, we use the word stakeholders to say like parents and community leaders who need a good education system, but why can't the stakeholders be the students? So the students are wanting to learn, and the students, if they want to learn about civil rights, then they're the stakeholder in the education. So let's listen to the stakeholders. He said, I felt guided towards the notion of a democratic classroom and democratic schools. The goal that we're aspiring towards is a big one. It's a big social issue. It has to do with school funding. It has to do with inequity. It has to do with justice. They were already self-motivated. They were self-motivated because they were stakeholders in this curriculum. My fifth grade students saw value in learning the skills. And this is where he gives you a nice little example here. He talks about from here to here, just examples of students' conversations and students learning skills such as analysis and comprehension and learning values because they were talking about a topic that they enjoyed. Instead, it was an opportunity to do what I have called falling forward. It wasn't a failure because now we had an opportunity. The idea here is to think about how to cover the state standards, but not for their own sake. So often we try to cover standards because that's what we're supposed to do. I'm going to pause here and tell you a story. I was in the Delta a long time ago, and I was doing a mentoring program with some new teachers. One of the new teachers was a teacher from, I believe he was from Cambridge, really smart, real smart. He was doing a Teach for America program, and he said he came in and he just looked like he was just completely just shell-shocked. And it was about January, and apparently there had been a food fight, and he had gotten some food on him, and he went home and changed clothes, and he was just really stressed out. And he said, our school district is starting a new program where, because of the state test, every teacher in every subject has to teach English tomorrow for a week. So he said, I'm a science teacher. I don't know anything about English, and I got to go plan this. I sat him down and I tried to explain to him, that it's okay, the school district is doing something very abnormal. Everyone's teaching English, but, we can make something good out of this. And he's like, well, I'm just not ready. And he continued on, but I don't think he ever became a full-time teacher. He ultimately quit. But the point is, he had gotten so invested in these state standards and national standards that it was actually just ruining his teaching experience. I don't know if the students ultimately learned anything, But we need to get away from the idea that state standards are so important that we have to cover them at all costs where it's not even fun to learn. And it's not even fun for you. And I tell new teachers this 100 times, and they'll get mad at me. They'll say, I've got to do well on the state test or I'll get fired. Or I've got to do better. You don't understand. We have to teach this. And I just can't get it across to them. And okay, why do you have to teach it? Well, I'll have to teach it because my job depends on it. That's actually in the contract, that your job is based on state test scores. Well, no, but my principal has told me. Has he put it in writing? Well, no, he hasn't put it in writing. Well, he's just told me if they don't do well, I'm fired. Okay, well, so if you get fired, what happens? Well, we need 3,000 new teachers each year. We have a high demand for teachers. So if you get fired, just go to other schools. Would you rather live a year in just pure misery of just, I've got to cover this? Or do you want to teach and enjoy teaching? That's the hard part. Now, ask a veteran teacher, and they'll tell you this. It was AIM, it was IMP, it was MCT, it's MCT2 now. They said, I've seen every testing system come, and I've survived them all. Why? Because I did what was necessary, and I enjoyed teaching also. So just think about that, and just do it. 55% of teachers quit after 5 years. So ask those teachers why they're surviving, and they'll tell you, I know what's important, and what's important is me teaching. He started to say, you know what it costs to get a new school building? Demetrius interrupted him and said, yeah, exactly. In Chicago Public Schools, it costs $18 million to get a new school building. The capital improvement program for the school allocates its money. Quickly, the state senator tucked the info away, acknowledging to the student, you actually know more than I do. And this shows you an example. When the student, Demetrius, wanted to learn something, he did. So important that the curriculum guided him to an education. So teach the students what they want to learn, and then they'll learn stuff that's also extra. We all saw value in reaching beyond the tired walls of the schoolhouse and entering the public sphere, where there are natural obstacles and barriers to overcome. This process was about building relationships, and this is where he stresses it. He says, to me, education is about building relationships. Relationships between facts, relationships between quality. Learning from the students, continues on, he talks about that. And he says, I tried to let the parents know that they had an open door. So he's trying to create an open atmosphere for the school. Very good little article in case you like it. If you don't, you can just say, it's just not for me. But it's a good little article that shows you about opening up the curriculum. And I like it because the instructor was teaching. He was tired of the state test so much that he says, I'm just going to teach what the students want to learn. And then he realized when he did that he was following some of the foundations of Dewey and some of our foundations of our philosophers who were saying, yes, that's what it's all about. It's about stakeholders, about teaching what people want to learn. So by shaking away the chains of state standards and national standards, he found himself falling back into what education is all about. I really like this article, and I hope you do too. Thank you for listening.